Alright guys, Mr. MathWiz here to do my quick video for lesson 4. So lessons 4 has a big thing to do with percent increase and percent decrease, which we've already talked about some, but we're just looking at it in another way, shape, or form. As with the rest of this unit, a lot of the stuff we're doing is not new material. It just looks new the way we're doing it, right? But it's the same stuff we've been doing before. So when we talked about increasing and decreases before, we had situations like let's say we had $40 and we were told that a store was going to mark it up 20%, right? So it was a markup of 20%. Then we had to figure out what the new price is. This is the kind of problems we've done before. And we could do that multiple different ways. We could do it where we look at 40 as the whole or the original. We use our proportion. We do 20%. And then we add it, right? So if you did that, that would come out to 40 times 20 divided by 100, come out to $8. On our little quiz thing that I gave you guys, a lot of you left the answer like $8, okay? Be careful about that. Please, please, please read the questions carefully. A lot of you got those questions wrong because you didn't give me the final answer. You just gave me the markup amount. You gave me the percent difference, but that wasn't what I was looking for. So the answer here, the final cost after markup, would be $48. You have to remember to add it or subtract it in some cases, right? Because if it's a price decrease, you would subtract it. But if it's a markup, you add it. So that's one way to solve those problems, right? And that's the way a lot of you prefer to do it, is with the proportions. You could also do it with the equation using the method that I taught, which is the method that I use. In the same question, if we were doing a 20% markup of $40, we would know that the $40 represents 100%, and 20% markup is 20%, right? So our final result is going to be 120%. And then I can just use, I could use proportions still. I could do 120 over 100, right? And that would actually give me the answer of 48. So I could do that if I wanted to continue using the proportions, or I can use the equation method, which is one I prefer, where I change my percentage into a decimal. So 120% becomes 1.2, because that decimal point gets moved 2 places to the left. So I have 1.2 times the original, which is 40. And then that should give me the answer of 48, just like the other one did, because you should get the same answer regardless of how you do it. Oh, I did that wrong. Sorry. It was 1.2 times 40. 48. There we go, right? Remember, there's always more than one way to solve these problems. So if one way doesn't work for you, try a different way. Or if you're not sure if you did your math right, try a different way, because both your answers should match, right? So this is what we worked on before when we were talking about markup and price drops and things like that. Now we're talking about percent increase, percent decrease. Basically what that means is that for the next couple questions for this lesson, we are not given the percentage, right? We're not told what the percentage is. We're actually going to be looking for it. So I'll use the same numbers. So let's say that you found out that the store was selling an item for $48. And that the original price was 40. So this is our new, this is our original. So there's different ways. So we found out what the new price was, we found out what the original price was. We want to know how much was the percent increase, how much did they mark it up. So there's different ways you could do this. One way, well, both ways that you do it is going to involve subtraction, because we know, we know that it's going up. So we're using our bigger number and we're subtracting the smaller number. So you could do 48 minus 40 to get you 8, and then just solve what is 8%, what percentage is 8 out of 40. So remember our formula where we said part over whole equals percent as decimal, right? Equals percent as decimal. So that's one of your formulas that should be in your formula sheet. So if we did our 48 minus 40, we got 8, right? So 8 divided by 40 should give us our percentage. 8 divided by 40 gives me 0.2, which when I turn that into a percentage, it means I have to move the decimal 2 points to the right this time, and that gives me 20%. Instead of moving the decimal 2 places to the right, you could just multiply it by 100. It's the same thing. I like to think of it as decimal moving. You might not need to think of it as multiplying, but it's the same thing. So 20% is our answer. There was a markup of 20%, which is, since I used the same problems as before, the same thing I had up here, right? So you can answer that by taking the new, subtracting the original, getting our answer, which was 8, and using our part over whole formula to get the percentage, right? That's one way to do it. You could also do it by keeping it, instead of doing part versus whole, I'm going to change color again. Instead of doing part over whole, you could do new over original. And this will give you the full percentage. Okay? So in this case, the new was 48. The original was 40. Oh, sorry if that looks like a 6. It's supposed to be an O. So 48 divided by 40, and watch what happens here. 48 divided by 40 gives me 1.2, which is the same thing I had here, right? So the idea here is, if you do it this way, with the new divided by original, 1.2 is not your answer. And now if I moved it to a percentage, that'd be 120%. But that's not my final answer either, because remember, the 100% represents the original. So once I have that 120, I would have to subtract 100 from it. And that gives me 20%, which is my final answer. So both of these ways of working this problem are very similar. In one of them, you do your subtraction at the beginning. So I did 48 minus 40 gives me 8. And the other one, I did my subtraction at the end, right? So I did my 120 minus 100 equals 20%. So whichever one you prefer to use is really up to you, but you have to make sure you do your subtraction. If you're trying to figure out how much something increased, you have to subtract the larger one from the smaller one. Now these same problems can work differently though. You will sometimes have decreases, right? So you may have a problem which said that something originally cost $30, but now it only costs $24. So in this case, this would be the original, and this would be the new. So I could take the difference, 30 minus 24, and that gives me 6. So that means it decreased by 6, right? So I would do 6 over, would I do it over 30 or over 24? Think about that. I'm doing the part over the whole, so it's going to be over 30. That's my original, right? Oh, sorry, it looks like a 6 again. I'm not very good at drawing zeros on this thing. All right, so 6 divided by 30 would give me 20. Well, 0.2, which I know when I move the decimal point is going to be 20%. So in this case, it decreased by 20%, okay? And I did that with my subtraction first, and then my division. But had I not done that, I could have solved it the other way, which means I would have done my new over my original. So if I do, oh, I thought I changed the color. If I do my new over my original, this looks a little bit messier, so if you don't want to use this one, I totally get it. But my new would be 24. My original is 30, which gives me 24 divided by 30, which gives me 0.8, which is not my final answer, because what this 0.8 represents, well, first off, let me change it to a percentage. It's 80%. So what this 0.8 represents is whatever 100 minus something equals 80, right? So I'd have to subtract it again. 100 minus 80 would give me my 20%, which is the same answer I had here. So once again, same answer. In one case, you subtracted at the beginning. In the other case, you subtracted at the end. So I can't really say that either of these saves you time. They both take about the same amount of effort. You just have to make sure you're remembering your steps, paying attention to what's the new and what's the original, right? So that's basically the premise of lesson 4. I hope that made sense to you guys. Make sure when you're working through all these problems, you're reading the questions carefully so that you do not forget what's the original and what's the new and what it is exactly that you're looking for. All right, have a great rest of your day, guys. Bye.